So, I'm really excited about this conversation because, you know, obviously, Meek, you've been in the headlines for a long time. Michael, you know, you guys have teamed up and are really getting passionate about criminal justice reform. And I think this is a great forum to talk about what you guys are doing, what the problems are, what needs to be done. And we're going to get to that. But I actually want to talk a little bit first about the friendship between the two of you, because this isn't just like some business partnership. You guys are...
I don't really like it.
You guys are pretty tight. So tell me, first of all, how did you guys meet?
I met Michael going to an All-Star game. I think it was in New York or New Orleans, was it? New Orleans. And I was sitting next to him, and I think his daughter was talking to my old girlfriend, and we were taking a lot of pictures, and Mike was like, "Who you?" And I'm like, "Who you?" He's like, "I'm one of the team owners for the Sixers." I'm like, "Oh, I'm from Philly too." I was like, "Yeah, I make music." So I think I had my travel restricted probably like a few months later, and all the Sixers games, I used to go to the Sixers game every day. Every other day I was going to a Sixers game. And Mike used to see me all the time. Mike used to say, why are you at the game all the time if you're a rapper? Like, you're in Philadelphia every day. I'm like, you don't understand. I can't travel. I can't go make no money. So he always brushed it off. We never really had a conversation, a full-blown conversation about it. And we started hanging out, and, you know, we became good friends. How long ago? Probably about 4 years ago. Since 2014 it's been going on.
That's great, that's great. I've heard you say that when you first met, Meek sort of peppered you with questions about business, right?
He was. When we met at that basketball game, what I loved about Meek immediately was he was question after question. The way I grew up, I barely made it out of high school. I didn't go to college, and you know, everything I learned from being a sponge and asking questions. And Meek was asking, you know, questions. Well, how'd you do this deal? Well, how'd you do that? Well, if I wanted to do this, how would that work? And so I loved his kind of inquisitive personality from day one. And as he said, you know, he was starting to come to our games all the time, and we just started spending more and more time. And I saw a guy who wanted to learn and grow from the second I met him.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Obviously, part of what's so interesting about this friendship is that you guys come from pretty different places. So, Michael, you grew up in the burbs in Philly, right? Just talk a little bit about growing up. So you know, what suburb was it that you grew up in?
I grew up in Lafayette Hill. You know, very kind of suburban neighborhood. But I grew up as an entrepreneur, a business guy. I always loved business from the time I was a kid. I think the story's pretty well known in Philly. But I started with ski shops when I was 12 years old. Always loved business. Wasn't really good at anything else. Wasn't a good athlete. Wasn't a good student. But business was what I was good at, and that's what I've been doing my whole life.
Right, right. And Meek, your background different, right? Talk a little bit about slightly, right?
Yeah. No, not slightly different. Heavily different. I come from North Philadelphia, which is known as the Temple area now, from like 18th and Birch to 24th and Birch. That was my neighborhood. Before it was like a Temple area. And, you know, I grew up, some people, at a speech I said yesterday, like, some people grew up in love, like, we grew up in, like, survival mode because we grew up in, like, being around violence, poverty, and drugs everywhere our whole life since we was babies. So we grew up in a different mode, so we adapted. Unfortunately, me, myself, I know a few people that helped me travel, and I seen different things at a young age, probably from 15 years old on out, so, you know, it expanded my mind and let me know it was more to life earlier in life. But I noticed some of my friends didn't have the same mind frame as me because that was all they ever seen. So, you know, that gave me a different outlook on life.
You got attracted to hip hop pretty early, right? And I read it was an uncle who sort of got you initially interested in it?
Yeah, I had an uncle named Grandmaster now. He was like a big DJ out of South Philadelphia. And, he used to DJ at my grandmother's house all the time, and me and my cousin used to always go up to his room and watch him DJ all the time, and then, you know, I found the love for hip hop.
So Philly Mag did a big profile of Michael a couple months ago, and you know, we appreciate that all the access you gave our writer. One of the things that got talked about in that story was that apparently you guys have had this sort of ongoing conversation or discussion about whether there's sort of two Americas. Is there a black America and a white America? I wonder if you could just even talk about what that conversation was about.
Yeah. So we've had that debate for a long time, and I've done a bit of a 180 in the last year, maybe a complete 180. You know, Meek used to always say to me, like, Michael, there's two Americas, you don't get it. I'd be like, bro, what are you talking about? Like, your life is great. Like, you're this incredible artist, you know, you're doing great. Yeah, you've got these issues, but like, you know, we live in one great country. And like, don't tell me there's two Americas. We live in one America. And then, you know, truth be told, verbatim, November 6th last year when I sat in the courtroom with Meek that day and watched everything happen, and I watched a probation officer glow about Meek and recommend no sentence. I watched a district attorney recommend no sentence. And then I knew that he had already been sent to prison a few times for never committing a new crime. And I knew that Meek always told me that he never did what he was originally charged of. And then 3 hours later, he got sentenced to 2 to 4 years in state penitentiary for essentially popping a wheelie on a motorcycle. And he called me from jail, from prison, an hour later. He's like, I told you so. And literally, it's the first thing he said to me. Look, this guy just got taken away. He said, I told you that there's 2 Americas. I'm like, Meek, you're right, I was wrong. And everything he told me was true. It was what I saw in that courtroom showed me there are 2 Americas. I just didn't know it until I saw it with my own 2 eyes.
Right. How did you react to the sentence when this happened? Were you surprised, or did it just confirm, yeah, there are 2 Americans?
Yeah, I was surprised. 2 to 4 years, I didn't even think I was going to jail. Yeah, I was very surprised. I was in shock. I was hurt. You know, I was just watching my career go down the drain at the same time. So, you know, I was going through a lot at the time. But actually, Mike, we had a break. We had like a probation hearing. A probation hearing is supposed to be like 15, 20 minutes. And happened to be, all my probation hearings are always 4 hours long for some reason. But we had an intermission, a break. And when we went on break, Michael Rubin was like, oh yeah, you should be going home. There's no way you're going to jail. They're not even talking about crime. They're not talking about anything. I was like, nah, it's not like that. In your world, if you came in here for popping a willie, you would probably go home. I come in here for popping a willie, it's a different story. But just saying to say that, talking about 2 Americas, I speak from a standpoint of coming from environments that I'm talking about, a ruthless environment, and growing up in fear of your life and resorting to having to carry a gun because you've seen somebody get murdered in your neighborhood 3 times a week, versus an Army veteran going to court and he's saying he got PTSD. If I got arrested for carrying a gun and I seen people get murdered all my life, friends, family, loved ones, people I grew up around, I can't go to court and say I got PTSD. That don't even like stand ground in our court system for the young black man. And I watch the news to this day when bad things happen. The first thing you hear is PTSD, and I'm like, we're just not eligible for PTSD, or if, no, for real. It's like, we don't count for that. Marijuana, I spend a lot of time in New York City. Like, I know a lot of people from the lower classes of New York City where marijuana is still illegal. You go to upstate New York and some of the higher classes in New York, marijuana is legal. You can smoke, you can walk around smoking. So there's just so many different scenarios, and Mike didn't really realize, I used to always tell him, like, Mike, you think I pointed a gun at 2, 3 cops before? And he used to be like, oh no, he brushed it off. But you know, I always used to say it probably once every 3 months. And I'm like, you really think I did that? You think I would be standing right here in front of you if I pointed a gun at 2 or 3 cops? And he didn't really understand the magnitude of it until I told him, I was like, yo, you should come to court with me and just see how this lifestyle go. And he came. Once he came to court, you know, he left in tears like all of us. The whole courtroom left in tears seeing me get sentenced to 2 to 4 years and how far I came. I believe I came from like ground zero, and I've been working on my whole adult life to get to the stage. And I'm like, state sentence 2 to 4 years. This is not rehabilitation. This is tearing my whole career down. I've been in the music industry for 10 years. I probably got a few more years left to be like a top tier rapper before I venture all fully into business. And you know, I'm sentenced with a 2 to 4 year sentence. I got a 7-year-old son. I already probably missed about 2 years of his life due to technical violations, and technical violations not meaning committing crime. I never committed crime since I've been on probation. I've been on probation since
11 years.
Yeah, 2009, and I never been back for crime. And you know, I've been to jail 4 times, so I just wanted to use my time and platform when I got out of this situation after I seen how so many people stood up for me. I wanted to use my platform to help those people who have family members caught up in the system and bring awareness to some of these laws, statutes, and ways that don't make any sense, and everybody know they don't make any sense.
I don't really know how to ask this next question, so I'm just going to kind of ask it. What's it like to be in jail? Can you talk about what it's like to be in prison?
It's terrible to be in jail. I always tell people, like, if your dog, you had a poodle and your dog, I walked in your house, your dog bit me on the ankle, would you lock your poodle in the closet for 3 months? No. If you locked him in the closet for a day and he got out the closet and bit somebody else again, would you lock him in the closet for 3 months? No. You probably would get arrested for animal cruelty for doing something like that. So me being locked up, arrested in the closet, or having shackles on your ankles, connected to your waist, to your wrist, it's a terrible feeling, especially knowing you didn't commit crime. It's a different world when some men are sitting in prison and they know they committed crime, or they know they did bad things deep down inside. It's a difference, but knowing that you didn't commit a crime, or you tried to be successful and be a productive citizen, it's a whole different thing. It was confusing for me. I spent a lot of days being confused, like a lot of people say. If you see when I came home, I probably gained 20 pounds. Mike said, like, Mike said, how did you go to...
Never go to prison and gain weight.
Yeah, he said, you're the only person that ever went to prison and gained weight. I'm like, I was confused on, really, like, how could I get 2 years and be in this system and caught up in this situation for something so small? And I would just say, I call it hell on earth, basically. Being away from your family, being locked in a room with a stranger, using a toilet next to someone 2 feet away from you, sharing the same sink with somebody you don't know. The food, did you ever see the food? The food is terrible. It's food that we wouldn't give our pets. It's a bad place. And unfortunately, someone like me, I was caught up in the system. I've been in and out of there 3 or 4 times, and I used to always tell Mike, I'm like, him and Robert Kraft came to see me. Robert Kraft like, how you still smiling? I'm like, it's bad, but it's normal. It's not like a big deal.
It's normal to you. We had this debate yesterday. We were in California, and I said to Meek, there was someone who, we heard about somebody else who literally had 2 joints, and because they had previous arrest 20 years ago, was sentenced to 13.4 years in prison for having 2 joints. And I said to Meek, that's not normal. He looked at me, no, that is normal. I'm like, no, don't ever accept that for being normal.
I'm saying it's not supposed to be normal, but
don't ever accept that.
On my side of America, it's normal. Like, we used to go in the yard in prison. Like, it's probably 500 people in the yard. We used to go in the yard, and people build relationships off of who's had the same judges. Like, I'd be like, all right, everyone that has this judge, they all see me in the newspaper, so people walk up to me like, yo, she gave you 2 to 4 years for popping a willy. Yeah, I got 3 to 6 years, man, because I had a dirty urine. And them groups would get bigger and bigger and bigger. It was one guy like, yeah, she gave me 2 to 4 years. I started with 1 year of probation. He had technical violations. Technical violations kept adding up. They tagged more and more and more and more years of probation. So it ended up turning to be 14 years of probation. On his 14th year, he had another technical violation, then he ended up getting a state sentence. But he started out with 1 year of probation. So, you know, we all grouped up and like used to talk every day. And really, it was just normal. These are just the people that's in this jail. We probably got 25 jails in Pennsylvania. This goes on a daily basis. And I don't accept it as being normal. And coming around people like Mike Rubin, or having friends that didn't come from like the neighborhood or wealthy people around me, it made me value myself more, because they used to be like, what, this is outrageous. No, I'd be like, I can't go to my mom's house. My mom is sick. She lives in New Jersey, probably 10 minutes across the bridge. If it's a weekend and my mother is sick, I can't go to my mother's house. My son lives in New Jersey. If it's the weekend, I can't contact a probation officer. I can't go to my mother's house. And my probation officer is not saying this. The courtroom that I'm in is saying this. They setting my probation plan up so it's so many obstacles to get through. Is like, it's designed for you to fail. And another reason why I felt like I should be speaking out, because me, I'm kind of doing okay for myself, where I got a rap career, I'm employing people, I'm making good money for myself. You got kids that come from neighborhoods where they don't have a background like me, or they might not be as mentally strong as me, and they might give up quicker, where you might have a job and you get a probation violation and you end up going to prison for a year or 2. You lose your job for not committing crime. And I'm talking technical violations, just for instance. You might lose your job, lose your relationship with your family because you're in the mountains 3-4 hours away. You can't see your family or your kids. And when you come back to the streets, you're coming straight back to poverty, violence, and drug-infested neighborhoods. What do you do at that point?
Michael, watching Meek go through this clearly flipped the switch with you, right? Just talk about a little bit about what happened for you when you saw what he went through.
You know, for me, I had no understanding of the criminal justice system before I kind of lived through it with Meek. And, you know, when we were, started becoming, pretty friendly, call it 5 years ago, and I was hearing about his legal issues. For me, it was kind of being in the courtroom that day and watching, first of all, go back to what he ended up in the courtroom for. He popped a wheelie in New York City and put it on social media. And then a day and a half later, 21 cops showed up. He thought to give him a police escort, literally. He thought he was getting a police escort, and instead they arrested him because he put a wheelie on social media the day before. He got arrested for that. They then basically dropped all the charges and went down to a traffic ticket. And then he broke up a fight in an airport where he got arrested, and they looked at the surveillance tapes and realized, oh, he didn't start the fight, and they dropped all the charges.
Yeah, and I didn't get arrested. I got a citation.
Right. It got dropped to nothing, essentially. Yeah. And so those two offenses were enough for the judge to bring him in for a technical probation violation. Now I'm hearing these things because he's my boy, so we're talking about it when it's happening. But of course I'm like, okay, who cares? Like this can't possibly be an issue. So now he's not allowed to travel. He can't leave Philadelphia. And I'm making fun of him, like, bro, like get a job. Like, what are you doing? Like, go out and do something. Like, why are you around all the time? He's like, Michael, I'm not allowed to leave Philadelphia. So last year, November 6th of last year, he just said to me, hey, if you have time, you should, come see this. So I went with him, thinking it would be a 15-minute routine probation hearing. And when I watched again the probation officer blow about his development, how well he's doing, and recommend no sentence. And then the DA recommended no sentence. And the lawyer said, no one ever gets sentenced in this situation. It never happens. So during this intermission, I said, like, you're good, bro, don't worry about it. And when she came back and sentenced him 2 to 4 years, it was like, for me, that was, maybe the worst feeling I've ever had in my life. Like watching, his life be taken from him and being taken from his mother, his son, his friends, his family. It was awful. And I looked at him and said, like, I'm not stopping until I get you out of prison. And fortunately, there was another woman who I'd never met before who was sitting next to me from Rock Nation, Meek's management company. She said, I'm not stopping. And the two of us kind of just went to work. And by the way, each of us probably spent 30, 40% of our time over the next, kind of 5 months because we both felt so sick about what we'd seen. But what changed for me is it originally started as we have to get Meek out of prison because he got sent to prison for nothing. It was literally someone just sent him to prison for nothing. But then investigators had discovered that he had never done the original crime. And that's what he said to me 100 times. He said, Michael, do you think a black kid could point a gun at 5 cops and be here today? That's called suicide. Nobody does that. And he said it to me 100 times. And then the first cop that gets investigated, they said, oh no, he didn't point the gun at the cop, the whole thing's a lie. Signs an affidavit. And he's still in jail. So I'm like, I can't process this. I'm like, here's this guy who didn't point the gun at the cop, who got sent to jail for it, who's been sent back to prison 3 different times for never committing a new crime, who's been on probation for 11 years with 6 years left to go, and we still can't get him out of prison. And by the way, we're spending millions of dollars and a huge percentage of our time, and we can't get this guy out of prison. I'm like, this system is fundamentally screwed, broken, like makes no sense. And that's when we started talking and saying, when you get out of prison, we need to make sure, like things happen for a reason. We have to take on the criminal justice system and fix what doesn't make sense. And by the way, there's lots of people that do belong in prison. There's lots of people that need to be in prison to make communities safer. But people who are on probation and test positive for marijuana should not be sent to prison. People who have a drug problem should not be sent to prison. People who show up late for the probation officer should not be sent to prison. Violent criminals should be sent to prison until they can be rehabilitated. So for me, the light went off sitting in prison that day.
You just alluded that there was a long legal ordeal getting out of prison, and you're still involved in it.
I'm still going. He has 6 years left of probation. Yeah. He's not allowed to, today, he's still on probation for 6 more years. Didn't commit the original crime, never committed a new crime. He's going to get the Guinness Books of the World's Record, longest probation. Literally. That's what he's going to be famous for. Not Meek Mill the rapper, longest probation ever.
Walk me through the other day when you did get out, and how that all came down, and so what happened that day.
You know me, I actually was in my cell watching the news. At 4 o'clock every day, it's like you gotta lock in. This is jail talk too, you never know, it's never been.
Hold on, you gotta back up for a second, because I was in prison early that afternoon with Kevin Hart, and it was the Sixers, a chance to close out against the Miami Heat. And I said to Meek, maybe you'll get out of prison today. He's like, Michael, shut the fuck up. I'm sick of you telling me that.
Yeah,
he's like, you told me I'd be home for Thanksgiving. You told me I'd be home for Christmas. You told me I'd be home for the Super Bowl. You told me I'd be home for the All-Star game. Don't tell me I'm coming home today. And then I drove back to my office, and we got a phone call. The Supreme Court ordered his release, and I'll give it back to you now.
Yeah, actually, I was watching the news, and I just looked at the news, and like, Meek Mill up for bail today, and you know, I just jumped up. Yeah, it was like one of the, it was one of the best feelings of my life. I was talking to myself in the cell, like I just won a championship game or something. I'm walking in circles, and one of the people that work at the prison came and said, man, pack your stuff, they about to leave. And next thing you know, I was leaving on a helicopter. I was dizzy basically the whole time. I remember from seeing footage of what happened, but it was just so much of a culture shock, I couldn't even remember. I just like blacked out. I didn't go to sleep for 3 days straight. I just sat up in the bed because in my mind, I'm being depressed for 6 days straight, and almost 6 months straight, and having that weight on your shoulders. I already had it in my mind, planned out that I would be probably missing 2 years of my life.
That's the difference. He thought he was going to be in jail every day, and I thought he was getting out of jail every day. Because for him, this was normal. And for me, this was uncomprehendable. Yeah. That's the difference.
Yeah. I don't want to skip over a detail because you mentioned that when you left in the helicopter, that was your helicopter, right? You picked him up.
It was.
Which is a way to leave in style, if nothing else, right?
There's no way to leave in style, but that just happened to be the situation. I would have walked home if I had to and still would have been happy. But I used to tell Michael when I was in prison, I'd be like, I had a dream, you came to get me in a helicopter. And I always...
How many times you told me about that dream?
Like 3, 4 times, but I wasn't saying it for him to come get me in a helicopter. I didn't even think that's possible. So my friend that hangs with Michael too, when I was arrested, he was hanging with Michael all the time. He was like, see if that's possible, let's see if we can go pick him up like that. And I didn't even know that was outside. Michael and them was actually at the door. I got in the car with them, we never talked about it. And when we turned out and made a left, I just seen the helicopter. I was like, it felt like I was living a dream or something because I already had a dream about the situation. And next thing you know, it was lights out for me. I just was dizzy the whole way.
So you guys are trying to turn this into something positive, and you are going to form a foundation that focuses on criminal justice reform. So just talk a little bit about what the goals are of this organization.
Yeah, the goal is very straightforward, which is today there's 6.7 million people in the criminal justice system, 2.2 million in jail and prison, 4.5 million on probation and parole. I think if you took, and by the way, America has 5 times the rate of incarceration as the rest of the world. To me, if you just took a logical, like what makes sense, it's probably half or 2/3 less. So we've set, which we believe is a conservative goal, everyone else thinks we're nuts and this is a really aggressive goal. We want to get 1 million people out of the criminal justice system in the next 5 years. And we're really going to focus on probation and parole reform. We're getting this 4.5 million people that are being supervised. And it's not benefiting the communities, it's not making the places safer, it's not helping them, it's actually hurting them. And we're really going to work on how do we change those laws, how do we change the policies, to have this be thoughtful in the way, if I were running one of my businesses, that I want to do to run this in the best way, we want to take the same approach toward the criminal justice system. We've already, we've raised, and we'll tell more details in the future, but we're going to formally announce everything in the next month or so. We've already had $50 million committed, so you're talking about huge financial commitment. Me, myself, we talked about Dan Loeb yesterday, who's one of the most successful hedge funds, the guys in the world. Robert Kraft, who's my good friend who owns the New England Patriots. Several other founding partners that will announce all the details, but each individual has committed at least $5 million to this. That's a huge financial commitment. There are people that want to use their platforms to make a huge difference, and most importantly, they care deeply about this issue. And for me, we actually only want people involved who care deeply about this issue. And for me, until November 6th last year, I didn't care about this issue at all. If Meek would have told me about a friend who had this happen, I would have said, let me write a check to help. But when you see this happen to a good friend directly, you kind of got no choice but to kind of take action. For me, I say to Meek all the time, I think he agrees, this happened for a reason. Like, had we not gone through this together, I think we wouldn't have an opportunity to help make the country more fair and equitable for, you know, hopefully millions of people.
Meek, what do you think some of the keys are to making some real change here? You know, what has to happen?
Bail reform, probation reform,
Education.
but yeah, of course, there's so many levels to it. I'm just saying, like, me, from my experiences of being locked up and sharing a cell with somebody that has 8 months in and got $100 bail for maybe trespassing. This is the second time for trespassing. He got $100 bail, but he spent 28 months in prison for about $100. Probation and parole, I'm telling you, like a kid has 1 year parole and it stretches out to be 14 years of parole for a technical violation just from police contact. There's so many different layers to it. Education is definitely an important layer to.
I mean, us educating people. To me, I look at kind of Meek using his platform. I don't think there's anybody who's done more for criminal justice reform in the past year than Meek. Because first, going through the situation, which was hell for him to live through, but so many people told the story, and it opened people's minds. So, like, take a guy like Robert Kraft. I remember the day that I took Robert to see Meek in prison. And Robert literally looked at me 3 hours into the conversation. He's like, I don't get it, man. He's like, a year ago, we were on a plane going to the baseball all-star game, and you were like at the top of your, top of your game. Everything was great. We're on the way to Miami, and now we're in prison. You're smiling ear to ear. How are you so happy? And he looked at me and said, for the first time, people are fighting for me. Never, when I got sent to prison the last 3 times, no one fought for me. Now people are fighting for me. So the education, like him using his platform, the way Jay-Z used his platform, when Robert Kraft came to Philadelphia, went to prison, and then came outside and said, this is wrong, that opened people's mind, because it wasn't Meek or it wasn't somebody from Meek's community. It was, Robert Kraft and the New England Patriots saying, I know this guy, he's a great guy, and this is wrong. So I think just people using their platforms to show the inequities. I'll give you one stat that blows my mind away. 750,000 people go to prison and jail each year. A quarter are for technical probation violations. The biggest 2 reasons, dirty urine for marijuana and being late for your probation appointment or missing your probation appointment. None of those people should go to prison. And by the way, I'm all for putting violent criminals in prison and people who do really bad things. But because you smoked weed or you were late for your probation meeting because you couldn't get there, or you had a problem, or you screwed up, you don't put people in prison for that. So to me, education of this is so important. Like, logical people get this. You just need to explain it in a logical way.
Yeah, it's funny, because I think I heard some gasps out here when you just even mentioned that there are 6.7 million people in the criminal justice system, which is, Philadelphia has 1.5 million people that live here, so it's 4 cities.
We have 300,000 people on probation in this state. In Pennsylvania, it's one of the minority states that doesn't have a cap on probation. Most states have a cap on probation of 5 years. If they just had a cap, if we had a law in Pennsylvania, like most states have, that said you can't be on probation for more than 5 years, his disaster would have been over 6 years ago. Again, he's been sent back to prison for doing nothing. So the laws don't make sense. You need logical laws, logical policies, and you just need smart people to come together and say, do what's in the best interest of everybody.
So one of the things that's fascinating to me about first your friendship, but on also teaming up on this, is that you guys come at this from different ways, in the sense of not just where you came from, but Meek, you're an artist, Michael, you're an entrepreneur. Meek, I'm curious, as an artist, how is this process, what you've been through, especially in the last year, has it changed your art in any way, or has it changed your music in any way?
To some degree. When I performed at the BET Awards, I performed a song called Stay Woke, and it was real talking about social issues, reforming the criminal justice system, and just really educating people through my music of what goes on. Like, I always tell people, my music will have all edges of music. Like, some people don't like rap because it contains violence and it contains bad things, but like I said, we came from these communities. We actually witnessed these things our whole life, even if you wasn't involved in them or was hands on it. It's like being a social forecaster, and this point in my life, I have to social forecast what I'm doing. Speeches like this and the information I learned from being in this situation, I have to be the social forecaster to actually give this information out through my music. So yeah, I think this situation has influenced my music.
By the way, I should mention that you have a new album dropping in a few weeks, right? So not that he asked me to, but I want people to know. I mean, they should.
I'm doing a lot of talking about my situation with and what I've been through with my situation.
That's great. Michael, from your standpoint, I mean, your mindset is that of an entrepreneur. How has that been impacted, and how is that impacting what you're doing with this?
I think it's really helpful because to me, if you take a political or governmental approach to fixing this problem, like waking up in 100 years will make no progress. You know, I think we need to take a disruptive entrepreneur's approach to fixing this problem. So to me, I'm like, what makes sense, and let's figure out how to get it done. I showed a good friend of mine our presentation that we've worked on about, you know, what we want to do, and our first goal was how do we get 1 million people out of the system in the next 5 years? And their response was, that's great, but why don't you go for 10,000? I'm like, because we're going for 1 million. By the way, if we get 800,000, guess what? That's pretty great progress. So for me, I think being an entrepreneur, being a disruptor, I've grown up with one mentality: no means yes, and I can will anything to happen. And I believe if you put real energy behind something and you want to make it happen, then you're going to get that outcome. And you know, Meek's being pretty humble. This guy spends so much time every single day on criminal justice reform, educating people, and I think, you know what, if you get a great group of people that we've assembled, I think, you know, 8 incredible founding partners with the capital, the focus, the commitment, the will, I think we're going to have, you know, pretty exponential results.
Josh Shapiro was out here a little while ago, and we talked not just about the Catholic Church crisis, but also about how divided the country is. And that was partly about a political divide. But to hear you guys talk to, there's another kind of divide in the sense that we don't know enough about each other's lives in some kind of way. You don't know enough about the way people like me were growing up and vice versa. Is there anything we can do to bridge that gap a little bit, to get a little more understanding of what other people sort of go through in their lives?
I think even having a connection and a friendship with people like Michael Rubin, Robert Kraft, people that come from different worlds, I think it's changing now, the bridge of gaps. Like people see like me and Michael Rubin hanging out. You got some people like, it's a conspiracy. Watch what you do. I'm like, yo, this has been my friend way before I got caught up in prison. When I went to prison, real tears. All my birthdays, I spent every birthday since this guy was my friend. He spent them birthdays with me and my family, and it's been the same on my end. And I think it's changing now. The game is changing. When they say wealthy entrepreneurs connecting with rappers, we just have to connect as friendship. A lot of people wouldn't even speak up for me. It was people from Philadelphia that I asked, like when I was locked up previous times, I'm like, could you come to court and speak up for me and talk about what I do in your community? It might have been like a councilman, like talk about what I do in your community, because before the last, probably from 2012 to 2014, I never broadcasted through media things I did for my community. I always thought that was like a marketing tool, and I always wanted to do things from the heart. But from 2014 on out, I was like, yo, I have to broadcast the things I do, because when things go bad in my life, they only talk about the bad things. Like, I got addicted to opioids. I'm going to prison for opioids, and I'm telling my judge, like, man, put me in rehab. I do a lot for my community. I employ people. I'm employing myself. I'm running a business. I take care of my family. Like, cut me a little slack. Just give me some help. I didn't know it was just go straight to prison. I've been to prison, I think, 3 times for opioids, but I never been to rehab. And I have friends that live in Montgomery County. My probation is in Montgomery County now, where if you come in with dirty yarns for opioids, you know where you go? You go to rehab. And I seen the divide between city probation and suburban probation, because I actually been on both, where for say city probation, I don't know if you guys ride by Broad and Vine early in the morning, you might see a line stretch all the way around the corner. Probably 200 probationers come in there a day versus 50 probation officers, where you might go to Montgomery County, you got 35 or 50 probationers coming in front of 30 probation officers. So, you know, they're more hands-off. They could take the time to put you in rehabilitation. My probation officer in Philly, go to prison, dirty urine. My probation officer in Montgomery County, are you on opioids? Yes, I'm on opioids. Do you need help? Yes, I need help. Rehabilitation. I never had a dirty urine for opioids ever in my life since my probation officer has gotten me rehabilitation. So, you know, it's like when you go to Philadelphia probation, I'm not gonna admit that I'm on opioids, because if I admit that I'm on opioids, I'm gonna go straight to prison. I'm gonna go to hell on earth, exactly what I've been explaining to y'all. I don't think anybody in this room would release that self to go back to hell on earth, and you know how bad it is. So it was just two different scenarios, and I just felt like I was the one that actually could get us, because I got like a popular face, I'm a public figure now. I felt like I'm the one that can actually deliver the story for the voiceless, because I've been in there with them guys side by side. I've been in there with these guys that have public defenders and didn't commit crimes and they have to take deal. Any public defenders in here? No, well, public defenders, I actually spend a lot of time in the visiting room because they had me locked down 24 hours. And when your lawyer come to see you, you get to get out of the cell for however long your lawyer see you for. And I spent a lot of time in CFCF visiting room with all the public defenders, and I watch guys coming in with public defenders for 5 minutes and sign their life away for crimes they didn't commit because they facing so much time and they don't have the funds to hire a real lawyer. So, you know, I just felt like I should have dedicated some of my time to, you know, trying to bring light to these situations, and that's what I do now. I always let people know, like, I just came from Los Angeles to here. Before Los Angeles, I was in New York yesterday morning. We flew to Delaware, then we flew to Los Angeles. I came back from Los Angeles to Philadelphia, and now I'm here. I let people know all the time, I don't get paid for this. This is not one of my marketing strategies. I like to rap, I like to make music, but I dedicated myself to making change and trying to help make change, and if I can do that, that's what I'm here to do.
That's a great note. Mick, Michael Rubin, thank you very much for being here with us. You're welcome. This is our last segment of the day, so I want to thank not only you guys, but all of the speakers that we've had today, who I thought were terrific. Have a round of applause for them. Also, a big thank you to all of our sponsors, who you can see listed over here. We have a happy hour, so please go outside, get something to drink, get some food, continue the conversation, and we'll see you next year. Thank you.